Steve Perry.
Good morning, everyone. Everyone, of course, knows me. I'm going to address a few issues and be short and sweet about it, but it's mainly about what I've been telling you since March, that certain aspects of your budget for the SSUS United States project has been way underestimated and everything. And I think the future agenda item on the thing will prove that. Even though most of it is attributed to additional costs that occurred prior to the tow and everything like that, and not to the remediation process. At least that's what the report says and everything. But sorry, you're going to be. I'm sorry. The National Resource Team and Church Development is asking for another $2.95 million. There's been many items on the thing. I've brought it up about the Coast Guard. Remember the data tables and everything was the work that I prepared and provided to the Conservancy. And this product and this data was submitted to you. Your county, the county gave it to your contractor, and your contractor submitted it to Coast Guard with their name on it without recognizing where all the work was done, which was work I did and everything. But my information was clear, so that should have helped you. The board, as Mr. Goodwin has said, has made statements that are incorrect at times and everything like that. You guys have known there's 84 to over 100 tanks, but for example, you budgeted $750 for marine chemist. Anyone that works in the marine industry like I have done for 40 years knows that's an absurd low number, and it wasn't even close to being accurate. In addition to your insurance, that back on, I think it was August 1st of last year, you brought up about the insurance issues and everything to the county attorney, and the county attorney said you guys were relying on the Conservancy's maritime attorneys. And of course, your hull indemnity insurance went from $40,000 to $405,000. So there's lots of things that were not accurate in the initial estimation for you and everything like that. But professionals who deal with this kind of stuff should have given you more accurate information at the time. And of course, based on the November 20th letter from the captain of the port in Philadelphia to the county board and your coastal resource manager, they made it clear due to insufficient information provided in the tow plan and everything else, that's why the ship didn't leave and you incurred additional cost related there too. This was not, what should not have been a surprise at all and everything for professionals doing this kind of work. This is not like towing a 100-foot boat from Norfolk down to Destin, you know, that was a burned out thing like Spirit of Norfolk. You're talking a 1,000-foot ship that weighs 32,000 tons of steel. That's if you put it on a weight. Don't go by the gross tonnage. That's a measure of internal volume for measuring operational cost and everything for a ship. So there's lots of things in this budget I've told you about, and it's not surprising. And this is only a small amount of money they're going to have to ask for because none of it addresses the increment that we've addressed every month since March to this board. And you're not addressing that issue at all.
June Wolf.
Good morning. I'm June Wolf, longtime resident of Okaloosa County, and I'm kind of following along with what he was saying. I'm a former contracting officer for the federal government, and when I was looking at the revised cost, it was a shock to me. You awarded a sole source contract to a contractor because of his familiarity with the ship, with the owner of the ship, and with the waterway. So it is kind of assumed that they know what they're doing. So the cost, particularly like he said, the indemnity insurance costs, I don't understand how they could be taken by surprise. That's one of the faults of doing a sole source contract is that you're working in a vacuum. Had this, and I don't know the details, forgive me. Had this been competed, because the sole source statement did not say that they were the only source that could do it. Had it been competed, then something like this might have been brought up to light ahead of time. When if another contractor had seen that cost, it would have allowed for better assumption of cost. And we wouldn't be at this point where now, we're kind of forced to do this extra money. So I appreciate you letting me talk. Thank you.
Next is the 2025 Maritime Landscape Preservation Outstanding Preservation Award, presented to our Natural Resources team. Yes, please. If you'll push the speak button. Thank you.
That's helpful, right? Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners, and everyone else here today. My name is Mike Tillman, and I am the co-founder and the Outstanding Preservation Awards Committee Chair for the Northwest Florida Maritime Landscape Alliance for Preservation Incorporated, or just MLAP for short. I am here today with the president and co-founder of MLAP, Dr. Sorna Haksad Knight. We are a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to preserving the rich maritime heritage of Northwest Florida, a region shaped for thousands of years by the Gulf, our streams, our creeks, our rivers, estuaries, and springs. They are all connected regionally by the watershed, and we are connected with it. Our mission is to ensure that the stories of the people that have lived and worked and thrived along these waters are protected and passed on to future generations. We do this through collaboration, supporting grants and local initiatives, and advancing long-term efforts such as establishing a national heritage area, Florida Panhandle. MLAP is powered by an all-volunteer board representing nonprofit leadership, business, government, education, tourism, the arts, the sciences, and research. Their combined perspectives from the Perdido River to the Apalachicola River reflect a broad community that cares deeply about safeguarding our maritime landscape. It is for this reason that each year MLAP's Outstanding Preservation Award honors those who demonstrate exceptional leadership in protecting the cultural and natural resources of Northwest Florida. On behalf of MLAP, it is our pleasure to recognize a team whose work truly embodies stewardship, innovation, and service to our region. This year, we are proud to present the 2025 Outstanding Preservation Award to the Okaloosa County Natural Resources team. Under the leadership of Natural Resources Chief Alex Fogg, this amazing team has shown extraordinary commitment to coastal and maritime preservation, a commitment grounded in science, strengthened through community partnerships, and driven by a bold vision for the future. Their efforts span beach restoration, artificial reef deployment, invasive species removal, sea turtle protection, and the development of ecotourism programs that connect both residents and visitors to our natural heritage. And my son and daughter have participated in that program, and they're snorkeling with the local experts, and it's phenomenal. Since 2019, their work has placed Northwest Florida at the forefront of artificial reef development. 14 large vessels and thousands of tons of reef material have been deployed, with more to come, including the transformational SSUS project, soon to become the world's largest artificial reef and a foundation of a future museum. Innovations like 3D printed reef modules, 3D models online, and interactive reef mapping tools are making marine science accessible to divers, students, and the public. Just as impressive is their collaborative spirit. Students, nonprofits, businesses, researchers, and volunteers all play a role in their programs. From lionfish tournaments and sea turtle patrols to planning the 410-acre North Shoal River Preserve. Their work strengthens ecosystems, enriches our heritage, and empowers the community to protect the maritime legacy of Northwest Florida. And on a personal note, I can say from experience that this team is a pleasure to work with. And as a diver myself, I can't wait to plunge into the Gulf and experience the SSUS and its final resting place. It is with great pride that MLAP presents the 2025 Outstanding Preservation Award to the Okaloosa County Natural Resources team. Congratulations, and thank you for your leadership and dedication. Is it okay? Yeah.
Ms. Jennifer Adams.
Close, not quite. Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. The item before you today is associated with an amendment to Coleen Marine's contract for the remediation and deployment at the SSUS. But before we dive into that amendment itself, I'm going to provide an update on where we stand with the project, some of the project partnerships that we have, some of the public concerns, and then eventually the amendment. So I'll try and talk really, really fast so we can get through this, at least to the amendment part. So for those of you who don't know, the vessel made its tow from Philadelphia down to Mobile in about 12 days, about a 1,600-mile tow. It took a little while we were faced with a number of challenges getting out of Philadelphia, generally associated with the captain of the port order that we received in November 2024. That was specifically talking to us, providing specifics to the stability and structural integrity of the vessel, a more robust tow and communications plan, specific tug selection beyond just conventional tugs and more numerous tugs as opposed to just a few. There was also some hazardous materials on board that needed to be contained in the form of oils as well as PCBs on the decks. And then lastly, bit strength to make sure that the force that the tugs were going to be putting on the vessel itself to make sure those bits were able to withstand that. Our contractor and myself didn't possess the understanding or knowledge to answer all of those questions. So we brought a naval architect on board to work with us. And we were able to get the analysis approved in early January, which was a pretty major undertaking. But beyond that, planning to get out of Philadelphia was tough. We were dealing with winter weather up in the northern part of the United States, which can be pretty fierce in the wintertime, as well as tides. We had to go underneath 3 different bridges getting out of Philadelphia, and one of those bridges required us to go under at low tide, and the Coast Guard wanted us to go under during daylight hours and not during rush hour. So there were a lot of constraints on getting out, but we eventually did. And we arrived in Mobile in early March, and that's where the work really began. So the 120 fuel tanks that are on board, those include not only the fuel tanks in the belly of the ship, but also hydraulic fuels and other things that are scattered throughout the ship. Those have all been emptied and cleaned. They're in various stages of being inspected and certified gas-free. At least 50% of those have been gas-free certified as of last week, but I suspect that number is a little bit higher now. I have not talked with the contractor this week about that specifically. 99% of the PCB containing materials, so the wiring, the flange gaskets, and the ventilation system, the green decking that was all on top, all of that has been removed and remediated. We've been working with the EPA to make sure that we're checking all those boxes, and they've made 2 trips down to the boat or to the ship since then to make sure that we're doing everything right, and they are very satisfied with all of our work so far. Both funnels and the radar masts were removed a few months ago, and that was a big visual milestone in the project. Those were put onto barges, shipped about 10 miles down the bay to a water-sized staging facility where they'll be stored until they're brought over here to Destin Fort Walton Beach, the museum. And that'll be sometime down the road in coordination with the SS United States Conservancy. All of the portholes and windows have been removed. The portholes have been transported to Okaloosa County, but those need to be removed because they actually had a gasket within the porthole that had to come off for remediation purposes. But we don't have plans for those at this time. And lastly, all the exfoliating paint throughout the ship, whether it be on the exterior or the interior, has been scraped off, vacuumed up, and transported to a disposal facility. If it had PCBs on it, it went up to Michigan. If it did not, it went to a normal landfill. So this is just a quick little visual of a schematic of the ship. The green basically shows where everything is 100% deployment ready. We're down in the bilges now, finishing up the remediation in the engine rooms, and we'll be going through the final inspections of those areas in the near future. I say 80% of the ship is completed and ready for final inspections. It's probably well over 90% now. Most of the inspection agencies that come on board to support this are federal. And there was a little bit of a hiccup here in the fall where they weren't able to make it or even communicate with us for quite some time. We're starting to communicate with them again. We have our next round of final inspections this Friday. And there's also ongoing planning for the safety, security, and the deployment plan. And that's being headed up by Florida Fish and Wildlife, U.S. Coast Guard, and Okaloosa County Public Safety. So future timeline between now and early 2026, we're going to finalize those gas-free certifications in the fuel tanks, remove the final little bits of PCBs that are on board, work with the EPA to make sure we've satisfied their expectations, do some additional testing for them, remain the final non-metal items, and then lastly, start cutting holes strategically throughout the ship to allow for air and water to transfer through the vessel quickly. So that during deployment, the deployment activity doesn't take multiple days. It's over the course of a few hours. And then hopefully deployment in early 2026. So with deployment, we're not allowed to use explosives. That goes back to why we're going to have to be cutting so many holes. We have to be able to get the water into the ship very, very quickly. All of those fuel tanks will be filled with water prior to deployment activities to at least get the process started and ballast that ship down a little bit. The naval architect that we used to get out of Philadelphia actually developed a model of the ship that we're going to use to allow him to inform us on exactly where those holes need to be cut to provide for an efficient and safe deployment. When it leaves Mobile, it'll be about a 3-day process. It'll arrive south of Okaloosa County and remain on site anchored for 3 days. There will be 24/7 security perimeter around the vessel during that time and personnel on the ship to ensure that everything is safe and there's nothing weird that happens during that process. So the deployment locations, as you may recall, there were 2 locations that were identified. One was kind of the southeast toward Panama City. The other one was southwest towards Pensacola, 25 miles from us. After some significant coordination between those communities as well as the military, the best deployment location was determined to be to the southwest, about 21 miles from Destin Pass and about 30 miles from Pensacola. This was in close coordination with the military as well. And as you recall, last meeting, we entered into a funding agreement with Visit Pensacola to help support the deployment of the vessel, as well as marketing of the deployment after it's gone down. So not only selecting a deployment site is really important, but then we have to do our due diligence to make sure that we're deploying this in a place that's void of any historical resources or any natural reef that's out there. So we did some side scan sonar as well as visual surveys to confirm that there was indeed nothing on the bottom. And what you're looking at here is a side scan mosaic. And those little dots that you see, those are actually artificial reefs, but they're 2 public artificial reefs, and the rest are private artificial reefs in the form of chicken coops. So that's a very common private artificial reef that's deployed by our fishing captains here in the destination, and it's nothing of concern. So our deployment location has been selected. So project partners, I mentioned that briefly. You've seen these come across your agenda over the last couple meetings. First being Florida Fish and Wildlife Foundation, which is the nonprofit arm of Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. They donated $2 million towards the project. Coastal Conservation Association donated $500,000 to the project, and that's the largest contribution they've ever given to any one project. Visit Pensacola, $1.5 million, $1 million going to construction, $500,000 going towards marketing. Force Blue is a group that we've worked with on a number of different projects. They take ex-special forces operators and redirect them toward, once they've retired, redirect them toward marine conservation initiatives. And the SSUS United States is one that they showed keen interest in, especially on the security side of things. So all the security and safety that the costs incurred for that will be covered by Force Blue, and they will support that effort. NAUI Worldwide is a scuba diving training organization. It's synonymous with PADI. They're helping us with the dive safety side of things and helping us coordinate with Dan and other organizations to make sure that we're getting messaging out there about how to dive wrecks and the SSUS United States safely once it's gone down. And lastly, the Explorers Club. The Explorers Club is a group that I was initiated into over the summer. They have a program where you can apply for a flag. You can flag your expedition. Other notable flagged expeditions are when people went to space, Marianas Trench, top of Everest. So the SSUS United States is now a flagged expedition, and we will be flying their flag come deployment. So all that to say, we've raised about $4 million in funding for this project, and we anticipate another $1 million or so worth of funding to come in between now and when the ship goes down. Research partners. This is something that's very exciting to me. We're working closely with Dauphin Island Sea Lab, Louisiana State University, groups that we've worked with before, but most notably probably Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute. They're the clearinghouse for scientific research or marine scientific research for the world, really. And they came to us wanting to perform biological, chemical, and physical monitoring of the ship for 10 years post-deployment. They went out and got some grants to fund the first 2 years of that, and we look forward to working with them to make that happen and hopefully collect some additional funding to support that. And then lastly, economic impact. We've thrown a lot of numbers out there about what other vessels, large vessels, have done for the regions that they've been deployed, and we hope to do that for the SSUS United States and show that those numbers are far greater than what those other vessels have done for those other local communities. So media impact. This is just to show what this vessel or what this project has done to date. So since November 1st, 2024 to November 1st, 2025, $184 million in earned media has been generated. So that we would have had to have paid $184 million to get the amount of media that this project has generated, and that equates to about 20 billion in reach. That's far greater than the world's population. But if I click on 10 different news articles that have that counts as 10 clicks or 10 hits. So keep that in mind. Every major news outlet is covering this. Numerous documentaries are covering this project, and IMAX is has shown interest in this project for a large film that they're making on shipwrecks, and they actually will begin. They will begin shooting on the SSUS United States in the coming weeks with us to support that film. So tourism benefits, I mentioned some of those other large vessels, the Oriskany, Bugle Grove, Vandenberg. They're looking at about, for every dollar invested, $150 in return. So that is significant. When the Oriskany went down, they were seeing dive visitation of about 10,000 divers annually. And honestly, the reason that number probably wasn't greater is because there weren't enough dive operators to be able to keep bringing those divers out there. So I anticipate that once the SS United States goes down, we're going to see numbers greater than that, assuming our fleet can handle the influx of divers. So we're probably going to see a lot of new businesses popping up in the dive industry. So deployment date, I get asked every single day. I'm sure you all do too. And it's a tricky one. It's hard to just set a date because we're having to plan for all the safety and security stuff. We're having to plan for weather. But what we're doing in the best case scenario is this vessel could be deployed as early as the last week of February. In the event that the weather does not cooperate or we hit other speed bumps, deployment would be pushed 30 days. If we run into more speed bumps and more weather, we push another 30 days until this vessel goes down. And it's 1 week periods to allow for a little bit of play with the weather. And again, that safety and security that's being managed by FWC, Coast Guard, and our public safety there's so many logistics, so many groups that are coming from around the United States. We can't just stop and start back up again in just 3 days notice. That's the reason for those 30-day delays. This is a dense slide, and it's meant to be. So this is the regulatory guidance that we're following for this project. Everything from EPA guidance, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, Florida Department of Environmental Protection, Gulf and Atlantic States Marine Fisheries, as well as our internal standard operating procedures. There's a lot of things that are going into this, and we're following all of it to a T. So some of the outside concerns, a lot of these you've heard during public comment, starting with this being being on the National Register of Historic Places. That doesn't provide any protections to being scrapped, to being sunk as an artificial reef or anything like that, unless it was owned by the federal government. There's a lot of concerns in the amount of aluminum that's on the ship. That is not a concern. There's a lot of aluminum deployed as artificial reefs. That's not something we need to be concerned about. PCBs, there was worry that we weren't going to fully remediate the ship of PCBs. We spent a lot of money, a lot of time, and a lot of coordination with the EPA to make sure that we're checking all those boxes. Lead and asbestos, there's very strict information in those same documents on how to deal with those, and we're following that to a T. Emotional distress and lawsuits, self-harm, harm to others, lawsuits against the county. We've heard all of it, and we've dealt with them accordingly. There's a lot of folks who are not keen on this becoming an artificial reef and have reached out to all of these regulatory agencies that I've mentioned, and we've had to jump through a lot of hoops to be able to satisfy those concerns. And there are some concerns that do not pose any concern by those regulatory agencies, and we'll get that in a second. The oil and fuel, again, we mentioned there's a lot of that on board, but we've removed it all, and we're going through the checks to make sure it's clean. Unexploded ordnance. There was concern that maybe the unexploded ordnance from Eglin Air Force Base could be a concern to our divers. It's not been a concern to any of the other artificial reefs that we've deployed over the years, and we actually work very close with them for their mission to actually create additional artificial reefs for our program. And last, zinc chromate and hexavalent chromium, which has been a hot topic recently, and I have one slide on that. Zinc chromate is not a federally regulated material that requires removal from the SS United States. It's treated just like lead and asbestos. So as long as there's no peeling paint that contains zinc chromate, it can remain on the ship itself. But zinc chromate is also it's very different in a freshwater environment versus a saltwater environment. So in freshwater environments, a lot of times they're very closed systems or semi-closed systems, and that ends up in your drinking water, and the freshwater itself doesn't lend to actually breaking down the zinc chromate. But in the case of saltwater, in the open ocean or the open Gulf for that matter, it does lend itself to breaking down the zinc chromate or the hexavalent chromium down to a trivalent chromium, which is a totally different scenario and a lot less toxic material. The EPA and the other regulatory agencies that comment on all of these projects have not raised any concerns about hexavalent chromium or zinc chromate, so we're proceeding with the guidance that are in the documents that we have at hand. So going into the amendment, how we got to where we are today, here are some of the unexpected costs, and these truly were things that we could not have planned for. The additional dockage in Philadelphia associated with a lot of the additional surveys and things that we had to do prior to getting out. The outbound tugs that we were required to use were significantly more expensive and more numerous than we had originally planned and were used in other similar size vessel tows. Tow and pollution insurance that was mentioned earlier, that jumped significantly due to some other accidents that had happened throughout the country around the same time and some of the knee-jerk reactions associated with that. Fuel surcharges. On our way down to Mobile, we encountered a situation where the U.S. Coast Guard wanted us to provide a tug to shadow the tow when it went through the Florida Keys. And that was not discussed prior to the actual tow itself. And we gladly complied because they would have held us up in Miami, and that would have been a lot of additional costs as well. And just general captain of the port order compliance. And this is just a snapshot of where we came up with the $2.95 million ask today in the amendment. The column on the left, the remaining budget, this is what the contractor still technically has within those buckets. These buckets were essentially taken from to fund a lot of those overages that I mentioned before. That last slide, that accounted for about $2.2 million of that $2.95 million that's being asked for today. The change from original, that's what ourselves and the contractor discussed as needing to be increased to get us to the finish line. We included additional dockage to get us to June 1st in the event that we have a number of weather events or things that keep us there longer. We have some contingency in there as well. So we're really only talking about a $400,000 or $500,000 increase to what the contractor originally proposed for this project. And with that, it was very quick. There was a lot of information there, but I'm happy to answer any questions. If you need any additional information about the project itself, you can go to thessus.com.
Thank you. Commissioner Cox.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Fogg, I think you visited this just very briefly at the beginning of this presentation that the funds raised exceed the ask here.
Yes, and I should
by over $1 million.
Yep.
So the impact on our citizens will be zero, except for the benefit of the continued project moving forward.
That's a very important part. So it's a $2.95 million amendment, but we've raised more than $4 million in funds for this project. So it'll be offset by those donations.
I know that took a lot of diligence, even while you're dealing with additional encumbrances and that you have detailed very in finite detail. I mean, I really appreciate all your hard work on this project. I know it's been a lot to overcome at the same time as you're putting on your cheerful face to ask for that money. But people believe in it all over the place, or we would be in receipt of those $4 million in raised funds, and we really appreciate your hard work.
Thank you.
Is that a motion, Commissioner Cox?
Yes, sir.
Well, I was going to make the motion, but I'll go ahead and make the second. Thank you, Alex, for all the work that you guys have done on this. For those who may be seeing this for the first time, we did get to spend, just as much time as we needed together on this to talk about all of these different things. And I had all my questions answered during those discussions. And so I do want to thank you for that. And I just, keep at it. Let's keep raising some money on this and even lower the cost on the citizens. Thank you.
We'll try. Thank you.
All right. Any other comments?
Just real quick. So, Alex, just to confirm, obviously you're here because you've identified an amendment to the budget, and I assume it's to the contract as well, or the various contracts that are needed to meet the project requirements as they become clear. Mm-hmm. So appreciate you bringing that to the board for approval. Obviously, you come with the understanding that there's always a chance the board says no, we're not going to approve those amounts. Just so that our citizens can understand, I mean, what's the backup plan if we don't budget this? What's the alternative for this ship?
If we did not approve this and we abandoned the artificial reef project, the really only option would be to be scrapped. It's been dismantled to a point to where it's not going to be a museum anymore. It's not going to be towed to Miami or other destinations to be a museum. The funnels are sitting at a landside facility waiting to come over here for the land-based museum. Scrap is really, truly the only option.
Was scrapping of this ship something that it was at significant risk of incurring before the county elected to buy it?
Yes, I believe that there was actually a company that bid to scrap the SS United States for numerous years leading up to when we took ownership of the vessel for artificial reef purposes. So essentially, we saved it from being scrapped.
Okay, so our options are, keep on going and get this done according with the guidelines. And you found a way to do that without any property tax dollars.
Yes, sir.
Or it would be scrapped, which is where it would have been previously had we not stepped in. So in other words, you didn't initiate a program to sink the ship. You actually started this because the ship was about to be cut up into pieces.
I mean, it certainly had an attraction to be a large artificial reef for our program, but the fortunate consequence of that was saving it. Yes.
Right. In other words, you weren't competing against somebody who was going to refurbish it and start driving it around.
That is correct. Okay. That is correct. There were numerous proposals heard and none of them.
Okay. And the reason I ask those questions is because I still get the communications that seem to think somehow Okaloosa County went out and said, hey, there's this ship. It's a great historic thing. We want to destroy it. And I think that's 180 degrees opposite of really what the effort is here. And I just I really wish we could dispel that, what I think is a misconception that seems to perpetuate somehow.
And there's not another artificial reef out there that will have a standalone museum honoring it with all the artifacts that have been collected over the years. I mean, the amount of artifacts that exist from this ship since, the 1950s is incredible. I mean, people reach out with letters and stories about them sailing to Europe on this to meet up with their husband and during, interesting times in our world's history. It's got an incredible history, and we're looking forward to continuing after it goes beneath the Gulf surface.
It should be noted the SS Conservancy, which was slated, the reason they bought it was to try and save it, and they've entertained proposals for many years. And the granddaughter of the ship's designer is the head of that agency. They actually were offered more money to scrap it, and they chose to go this route because they thought this was a better legacy for the ship and everything else than the other options that they had seen to date. And they received proposals from all over the place, and most of them turned out they were a lot of wishful dreams and stuff with no money or financial backing or reality check as far as the cost of redeveloping the ship. So they chose us over scrapping, even though they could have done that to financially gain more because they thought it was the better way. And they were dedicated to preserving the ship. So that says a lot right there.
Thanks for clarifying. I'll certainly support it. Don't like going over budget, understand how it happens. Happens just about anytime you build something or take on a big project, there can be unknowns. I know that there was some discussion that maybe we had improperly budgeted from the beginning, but I know we've sat down and talked through it. And my understanding is that there literally were things that would have been unreasonable to have anticipated occurring along the line. And that's really where these extra dollars are coming from. Yep. So again, you're staying out of the general fund dollars, so appreciate that. Yeah. And I'll support it.
Mr. Fogg, tell me, total project, how much of this is coming from property tax?
0.
Okay, thanks. Knew the answer. It's just good to hear that.
Of course.
Social media says otherwise very frequently. Yep. And so it's good to be so transparent to say it's not. Yep. At some point, people will believe that.
Yep.
So that'd be good.
One person at a time.
All in favor signify with aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Mr. Bitterman. Great. Yes, sir. Steve Perry.
I had some things I wanted to say further, but I'm going to change that and everything. I appreciate you guys taking the time to let me speak and everything like that. However, I respectfully disagree with some of the comments that natural resource thing. I want it on the record with you guys know that myself and my colleagues, none of us have done anything or said anything to try to prevent you or steal the ship or suggest that property taxes are going to be paid. None of us. I can't help what private people do out in social media and stuff like that, but no one from my team and our organization has ever done anything. We've done nothing but respectful, and I've come here a dozen times to speak to you about this issue and everything like that. So, Mr. Mixon, with your permission, Mr. Tomachek has a couple pictures at the end of the thing, if it'd be allowed to put it on the screen so you could see them.
No, we're not going to put pictures of public comment, but if you'd like to, Mr. Tomachek, send it to each commissioner via their email.
That would be fine.
They'll be able to see them.
So with that said, again, just wanted on the record that I've been speaking on behalf of this ship and everything like that because it is a historic thing. I know everyone seems to think it's a rust bucket and it's completely gone, but I know ships. I've been dealing with it, and you'll see it in the pictures you get for 50 years. And I know ships. I've seen ships that are rusting away in 15 years and one that's not and everything like that. So I disagree with your philosophy in it, but I understand it. But there is a video out on YouTube with called a free documentary that says sinking an aircraft carrier. And if you watch that, you will see that the Navy did remediate zinc chromate off that vessel. And that's the reason it cost nearly $25 million to do it. But the Navy had to do it within government agency. So I know there might not be any private EPA rules on the records right now, but the government had to do this, and private people shouldn't have to do anything less than what the government has to do to protect our environment. We may not see it exactly, and as soon as some people may have make it sound like, divers are going to start diving and dying from poison and stuff within a year and everything like that. But one significant thing about the ship with the aluminum that's in the superstructure and the steel hull, there's a thing called galvanic corrosion. Yes, aluminum boats that are all aluminum, don't have a reaction. They don't corrode in water. But when you have steel and aluminum, the aluminum is the sacrificial animal, and it will start corroding. It may take decades, but it will create an issue later on. A lot of this stuff may not appear to us in our lifetimes, but this is a legacy that you're going to have when there's all steel ships that will provide the same issue for you and everything without creating difficulties down the road, as well as with the zinc chromate and hexachromate. I'm sorry, I disagree that it breaks down into trichromate in salt water. There's no proof of that and everything. We've done our research and everything like that. So it's very important, so you guys know that. I respect that you guys vote the way you are and everything, and I'm going to continue coming here and speaking on behalf, and I'm hoping that we can get this issue on agenda items that you mentioned back in September, and I'll be sending an email all to you about this issue in the very near future. Thank you.
Michael Hume.